Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. We are about to conclude the Building Bridges of Opportunity 2022 Community Experience Welcome Home, Housing Opportunities and Meaningful Employment. I'm Gerald Graves, and I'm with the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction Office of Reentry. And I'm one of several folks who have the privilege today of sharing a few transitional thoughts with you as we conclude our time together. You notice I use the word transition, not closing, because we don't want to close our connections that we've made over these past few days, but simply move them forward to the next fruitful interaction that we hope and pray that all of us will have. If you were able to join us for all or most of the past 2 days, you've heard information and discussion around the certificate of qualification for employment, which is about employment for folks who have been just as involved in equity in that arena. You've heard about how to become your own boss, how to start a small business. You heard conversation about faith-based partnerships and faith-based support in the community. You've heard about behavioral health housing, housing for folks with other kinds of offenses that are sometimes difficult to place in the community or difficult to find housing opportunities in the community in the term of affordable housing. You've heard about why sentences matter and the impact that the length of someone's sentence has on their opportunity to reenter and their ability to find successful reentry for themselves in their community. You've heard those things and a lot more. You've also heard from folks with lived experience, which we think is probably the most important part of our participation and opportunities over these past couple of days. Folks who have literally lived the life and walked the walk of incarceration and being just as involved and having to navigate those circumstances and the circumstances that follow in society once they have returned to be our neighbors in the community. You've also heard from folks who have been attached to this kind of work, some for decades and some for not as long, and then some folks who are brand new in this space who are interested in the work of reentry and the cause, if you will, of reentry and the mission that we're on to better serve people in the state of Ohio who have been impacted in some way by the justice system. And so I hope that the common thread that you've seen or noticed in your interactions and conversations and the presentations that you heard was a willingness to listen, to learn, and most of all, to connect. One of the underlying goals of this entire effort, if you notice the principles underneath Building Bridges of Opportunity, is connection and an effort to increase your willingness to commit to the work of reentry by increasing your connection with like-minded people who are pulling in the same direction or endeavor to pull in that same direction of doing the work of reentry in our community. Now, to be clear, the connections I'm referring to is not about trading emails or phone numbers or other kinds of contact information or social media and those things. I'm talking about active and empathetic listening that allows us to identify with someone else's goals, their needs, and their desires, whether as a client or as a peer, and feel a connection that motivates us to action, that motivates us to do similar work in that same space. If you're familiar with the leadership writer John Maxwell, Maxwell tells us that there are 5 principles to effective connection. And those principles are finding common ground, keeping your communication simple, capturing people's interest, creating an experience that everyone enjoys, and staying authentic in your relationships. I would say that we have accomplished that over these past 2 days with this Building Bridges experience. The planning team, I think, put a lot of effort and time into doing that. I hope that has been your experience, and I hope that you will keep in mind those 5 principles for connection. So it's not just about trading information, it's really about making a connection with people who are like-minded and who are doing the work of reentry in the community alongside you. And so with that, I now have the pleasure of introducing a short video from someone whom I consider a colleague, a co-laborer, and most of all, a friend. We have been on this reentry mission together since 2011, and we've seen our share of triumphs and challenges and other things in between. but I'd like to think that we've never lost our focus or our commitment. My friend Kirsten has been engaged with Building Bridges of Opportunity since its inception, and she asked me to pass on her regrets that she could not be here for this particular session. But here are a few words from Kirsten Palmore, Deputy Director of Community Engagement and Reentry with the Ohio Department of Youth Services.
We've come to the end of the community experience. Now what? What can you do to capitalize on the information, knowledge, contacts you gained over the last 2 days? And how can you seize this momentum to keep moving forward? Good afternoon. I'm Kirsten Palmore. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Engagement and Reentry for the Department of Youth Services. I regret that I cannot be with everyone in real time, but my schedule called me away. I do not have the perfect answers to the questions I posed to you. However, I do have a few thoughts. One, reentry doesn't happen in a vacuum. Safe and successful reentry outcomes require the community. It requires the community to have a vested interest in creating a safer Ohio for everyone, including our returning neighbors. To that end, I leave you with 3 challenges to undertake to create a safe and successful outcomes for returning neighbors. 1, adamantly encourage, consistently influence, and persistently nudge your policymakers, particularly county commissioners, city councils, judges, and prosecutors, to make a commitment to invest in local reentry efforts by participating in funding of reentry coalitions, alliances, partnerships, or spearheading the creation and funding of reentry coalitions, alliances, or partnership. What we invest in is what we value. 2, actively engage local faith-based organizations to collaborate and/or partner with other organizations to continue to host events like the Community Experience all year round, or create reentry ministries or outreach. It only requires organizations to do what they are able to do by their charter and their mission. For example, creating food pantries or clothing closets, or any items or services that provide the essentials for individuals returning to the community. Now more than ever, we need our faith-based organizations to step forward and do for the least of these. 3rd, and this is the longest one. So if you are a first-time participant to the community experience, welcome. I challenge you to become an ambassador for reentry. Talk to your family, your friends, neighbors about what you heard and or learned over the course of this event and how they can get involved. Attend a local reentry coalition meeting. Plan an event to educate your network on the issues and challenges of reentry. Attend city council meetings. Contact your county commissioners to find out if their funding has been allocated to local reentry efforts. Write editorials about the challenges facing individuals returning to the community from incarceration, especially as it relates to safe and affordable housing opportunities, or participate in planning next year's community experience. If you're not a member of your local reentry coalition, I urge you to become a member. The Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction has a list of reentry coalitions and their contact information on their website. If you are a member of your local reentry coalition, thank you. Please maintain your commitment. Stay involved. Volunteer for a committee or become a co-chair. Contact your coordinator or director to find out the areas of need where your talents, skills, knowledge can be utilized to ensure safe and successful outcomes for the men, women, and young people returning to your community. We all have the power to become an agent of change to ensure that Ohio offers all its residents equitable access and opportunities for a safe, prosperous, and happy life. Remember, our men, women, and young people are experiencing reentry challenges every day. They can't wait for legislation. They're counting on you to offer hope and a helping hand. Thank you.
Go ahead and just move forward here next.
Yes, please.
No, yeah. All right, thank you. And definitely appreciate those great words from Kirsten Palmore. And you know, I want to thank the Building Bridges community experience for allowing me the opportunity to come on today to just share with you about a call to action for some things that we do here at Montgomery County Office of Reentry in Dayton, Ohio, and we would like to also see across the state as well. Just real briefly, the Montgomery County Office of Reentry here in Dayton, Ohio, we serve men and women who are returning back to the community from the justice system with to provide them with programs and services that minimize barriers and promote a reduction in recidivism. And we do that primarily through our AAA philosophy of action, alliance, and accountability. Action, putting forth the effort, the alliances, building those relationships and networking, and the accountability, taking that personal responsibility. And we foster that not only for our participants, but also for staff, and also for those partners that work along with us to assist our returning citizens. One of the ways that we do that, and I think is real important based on a lot of the information that's been provided over the last few days, when we talk about health and employment and housing and sentencing and lived experiences and so forth, is through that collaborative effort. Which is extremely important. And here at Montgomery County Office of Reentry, we do have a reentry collaborative here in our community that is encompasses a partner agencies that provide information, knowledge, resources, help us get the word out about reentry, and also to help educate other not only themselves, but others as well. And there's information we can provide for you if anyone is ever interested in getting involved with our reentry collaborative here in Montgomery County. What we do also here at the Office of Reentry is we have a Career Alliance Academy, whereby through this collaborative effort, our 4-week program, whereby our participants will come in and go through comprehensive workshops. The vast majority of those workshops are provided by our partner agencies through this collaborative effort as well. So staff, we just do a small portion of those workshops, but they range on various topics. And we do that through a holistic effort. And those topics, of course, range from reentry planning, the offender workforce development, and job retention, which is extremely important. Personal and family and social responsibility, behavioral health, housing, always at the top of the list, behavioral management, financial literacy, networking, legal issues, education, and other supportive efforts as well. So when we look at the call to action for partners and participants with employment, let me take a step back real quick. I am a returning citizen. I've been back in the community for 26 years now. I served time in Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I've been working in reentry with Montgomery County for the last 8 years as a permanent employee, but I've been involved with the reentry office since its inception in 2010. So I just wanted to, identify that for you or disclose that. So when we talk about the lived experience, looking at the lived experience and call to action, some of the things I've heard for some of the information that I've heard when we talk about employment, making sure that we get that word out to employers, that we're engaging, that we're educating them on the information that is beneficial to them. Daryl mentioned earlier when we talk about CQEs, record sealing, and the fact that when we talk about our returning citizens and what they bring to the table, making sure that we educate them on that. And also just, talking about the elephant in the room, those convictions, and making sure that we're in compliance with what they're looking, what their restrictions are, or what they have in place in their policies, and how we can work along with them to provide them with the employees and candidates that meet their hiring needs. Housing, to say the least, again, educating our landlords, and also making sure that we're working with the POs and probation officers very closely with folks who have some restrictions in terms of where their opportunities are to live. And knowing that information and being real deliberate about making sure we don't put our participants in situations that are going to cause them more frustration and strife and so forth. Family reunification. I know for me, what was really important when I returned back to the community 26 years ago was that I had family support. My kids were little, but I wanted to make sure that as I build that reunification with them, that they knew my story and they got it from me. And that we're working along with participants to, we look at a call to action to make sure that we're working along with participants and helping build that bridge with their family members, if it's feasible, if it's allowed. And I think that's really, really key and really important. Education is extremely important as far as building bridges back to the community for participants and for those that are going to be working with them. Education, and this is my opinion, this is not a Montgomery County Office of Reentry fact, but in my opinion, education helps level some of the playing field. When we talk about education, not just getting degrees, but getting certifications, training, vocational training, those kinds of things that are going to give folks the skill sets they need in order to fulfill some of the job opportunities, that are out here, and be able to work and take care of their families. But education and training is so important. I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree, and earned 2 master's degrees, and it changed the trajectory for me. So we, as a call to action, I think those of us who are working with returning citizens should, make sure that we are encouraging our returning citizens to get the skills and stuff that are needed to fulfill the job opportunities that are out there right now. Because right now the job opportunities are vast. There's a lot of opportunities. However, some of you may, those who know that could change. It could change. It could possibly change, and we want our folks to be prepared. Calling to action, volunteering and mentoring, encouraging our folks to build the bridges, and to be sure to volunteer, get out in the community, be a part of the community. This weekend, I have a team of about 20 community partners and a combination of community partners and returning citizens. We're going on the breast cancer walk because that helps with, not getting rid of the stigmas and stereotypes, but getting out there, giving back to the community and help with that. Changing some of the stigmas and stereotypes that the community has for us, because now they can see that we're giving back. The mental health, substance abuse, again, encouraging folks to get and everybody working on the same page with those things, encouraging our folks to, if they have those issues with mental health, with substance abuse, to go get the help, making those referrals, making those making those phone calls for them to get them the help that they need. One of the things in that I think is real key and important with that as well, and I'll just say this, and what we're beginning to see that we see here at the Office of Reentry in our Career Alliance Academy, is that those individuals who are doing multiple decades of time are having some issues with struggling with their transition back out into the community. And so I think on a call to action that there needs to be more conversation on how we can assist and address those and help those individuals. I know there's some things in place inside the institutions. Some of folks are slipping through the cracks for whatever reasons, and they're coming out and they're having a hard time. They can get the jobs and different things, and even maybe be able to get housing, but they're just struggling with being out, especially after having served quite a bit of time. And so we're beginning to notice more of that just through some behaviors and observations, and want to make sure that we get those folks the help that they need if they feel like they need the help, but it needs to be addressed, I believe. And so, that's pretty much all I have. Continue to do the work that we're doing. At the Office of Reentry, we have our different subcommittees, our Women in Reentry Subcommittee, because women are the fastest growing population into the justice system. We have our Legal Subcommittee, Employment Subcommittee, Public Education Subcommittee, and also our Housing and Employment. So those are subcommittees we have. There are spearheaded by our Reentry Council co-chairs, Federal Judge Walter Rice and Commissioner Debbie Lieberman. And so we address those, have those 6 categories addressing those issues for our returning citizens, to provide them with the information and knowledge and resources that they need. So with that, that's pretty much all I have at the moment. And if you want to look on our Montgomery County Office of Reentry webpage, there is a publication, a fall newsletter. Kristen had mentioned about making sure that we, on a call to action to have those newsletters and different things to provide to folks in the community. And we have our fall newsletter. It's called The Journey. It's on our Office of Reentry webpage, and just some great things inside the newsletter. Talking about destination, new beginnings, highlighting one of our graduates. Our team going out speaking to the West Carrollton, Police Department, along with one of our star reentry graduates, James Clay, and then of course Mr. Jeff Carson, who is who spoke at our fatherhood banquet as well. So lots of different things, news feature that was done as well. And so, when we talk about call to action, it's about staying out front, getting staying in the forefront and, getting that word out and educating our community. That's all I have.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Mr. Howard, thank you for your comments on the services that you offer and the tremendous work that you all are doing down there. I know I have a couple friends who are working with you currently, and they are raving about the services that they are being provided. So again, my name is Zach Ruppel. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm an administrator with the Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative and also a consultant with accompanying Returning Citizens with Hope here in Columbus, Ohio. I am living with a criminal conviction. I am a registrant, but I am also home. And I am your neighbor. I am your colleague. I attend your houses of worship. I serve with you. I mourn with you. And I want to be in community with you, which is really what these last 2 days of the Building Bridges community experience is all about. Our community members returning home from incarceration, as well as those living with a conviction who may have never even been incarcerated, are living with a type of social othering that continues to have consequences felt far and wide across the social determinants of health. So over the last 2 days, we've highlighted just two of the most pressing economic issues facing those of us living with a criminal conviction. But there are, however, well over 1,000 different collateral consequences just here in Ohio associated with a criminal conviction. So this is why, as Ms. Palmore stated, successful reentry really is incumbent upon the community's support. My hope is that after these 2 days, your minds are open, your hearts are full, and your hands are ready to do the work. But what does that work look like? When I returned home, I was blessed to be able to move directly into my own home, in a neighborhood, with my own clothes waiting in the closet, and eventually was afforded the opportunity to work with a friend that I met through my recovery journey. My experience was unique, and I am grateful for it every day, but the existence of the returning citizen is indeed a fragile one. Just as the road to recovery often includes relapse, so too does the road to successful reentry twist and turn through many barriers and challenges. It is our opportunity, and in my opinion, civic responsibility, to ensure the social safety net is threaded in a way that is prepared to support every member of society when they struggle. This includes all ages, all faith backgrounds, all racial and ethnic backgrounds, all gender identities and expressions, and all offense types. Why? Because that is what community is, and that is what a true community does. I love the quote Kristen shared, that community invests in what it values. You're here today and yesterday and in the front lines working beside of all of us because you see value in this vital topic and in the lives of those of us living with a conviction. Our work is now encouraging others to invest. This is the work of advocacy, and it is the work of relationship. I encourage you to turn this week's insights into action. Our communities are safer when the road home leads to opportunity rather than opposition, accountability rather than retribution, and inclusivity rather than exclusion. If you know me, you know I love policy. I love digging into the funk of the status quo, and I love asking why. It is imperative we continue to examine local and state government policy, local educational and employment policy, local housing policy, and local reentry services policies, and then ask why. There is power in community, and there is power in our collective voices asking for a more restorative approach to justice. I encourage you to harness that power more deeply. So in closing, one of the quotes that I love to keep at the forefront of my service is in the book of Matthew, where we're reminded that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Friends, we have a lot of work to do, but I'm excited to work alongside you in community. I thank you for giving me just a few moments to share some thoughts, and I want to offer a sincere thank you to the planning committee of this tremendous event. Have a great evening, a great rest of your week, and I appreciate the work that you all do.
Well, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you again to Building Bridges of Opportunity for giving me this opportunity to address this particular group. At this time, thank you to Zach and to Quinn and my friend Kristen for their comments and their thoughtful commentary on what we've experienced excuse me, but more importantly, what we have ahead of us and what we have in common. So I just want to mention a few things before we conclude for today. Those of you who know me, and some of you have worked with me directly or indirectly, I know Zach certainly has, and Kirsten and Quinn and some other folk know that I like to think about things. I like to kind of ponder and reflect on things. And I've learned that often with reflection comes sometimes a little bit of discomfort, but I'm a firm believer that often the changes that we need to make and what spurs us forward is that little bit of discomfort that we find when we reflect. So I want you to think about a few words that you've heard today, as recently as in the previous comments from my colleagues, and some of the things that you've probably heard over the past couple of days, or that you tend to hear often in the work of reentry, or just in your work in the community. And so one of those things that's sort of a popular phrase now is to know your why. And there's been books written about it, articles, journals, and those kind of things about knowing your why. What is it that you're doing and why are you doing it? What is your purpose? Why you're in this space and why you're interested in this particular work. So I want you to keep that in mind just for a few moments, and we'll come back to that. But I want to talk about a few other words that I'm sure you've heard over these past few days, again, as recently as in the comments from my colleagues. One of them is reentry. And typically when we think about reentry in terms of incarceration, we think about it in terms of someone transitioning from incarceration back into community. But I'd ask you to think about if that is really what happens. Does someone really go from incarceration back to community? Is that what reentry is? The second thing is the word community. Again, you've heard us use that multiple times over these past few days, and we talked about creating community and working in community. Community, by definition, is a group, not necessarily a location sometimes, but as far as a group of people with common characteristics and interests, common culture, heritage, that is somehow distinct from the larger population. But I'd ask you to think of it this way in this particular context. Many of the folk that we are talking about serving and serving alongside come from a life that they don't want to or need to return to. So when we think about reentry in community, are we asking folks to return to the life that they've left, the life that left them incarcerated and separated from their family and from their loved ones and from the things that they hold dear? Is that where we want them to return? To that life? A life that in many cases is marked by trauma, addiction, abuse, failure of systems, and all kinds of things that are purportedly in place to assist them and to serve them. So that's been the community that a lot of our folks have been a part of. Is that the community that we want them to return to? I would say not. So when we're talking about community and reentry, I'd ask you to think of what we're really asking is someone returning to what is essentially, in most cases, a new life in a new community. And that is what we're asking people to do. And I'd ask you just for a moment in your own life to think about how big of a challenge it would be for you if you were asked to live a new life in a new community. And by the way, you were asked to do that in a situation where statutes and policies and protocols and social norms were all stacked against you. So when we talk about reentry and we talk about community, I'd ask you to think about it in that way. We're not asking someone to return necessarily to, in many cases, to a community where everything was good and everything worked well. We're asking them to live a new life in a new space. And imagine how difficult that could be. So that's the work, in my mind, that we are really doing. And that's what we've been really talking about over these past couple of days. And so speaking of talking, I want you to think also of this. So we've used the word conversation often, but if you notice for this particular past 2 days and last year and the year before, we didn't use the word conversation, which is a hot topic now in a lot of arenas of community conversations. But you notice we refer to this as an experience, not just a conversation. A conversation is just exchanging words. And so we hope that what you have experienced over the past few days has been significantly more than that. an experience is something that we think about when we reflect upon and evaluate it, that changes our views or influences our thinking, or perhaps both. You notice I used the word evaluated. So I would ask you to think of it this way: despite the common aphorisms and sayings about lessons learned, the truth is that we don't necessarily learn from something simply by living through it, simply by taking it in with our eyes and our ears. We learn from it by evaluating the experience. We take away a lesson when we think about how we apply the information that we've gained, and as it relates to our past, our present, and our future thinking and behavior. So just as we hope the returning citizens, our returning neighbors, have evaluated and learned from their experiences, we are obliged to do the same with what we've heard and seen over these past 2 days. So we hope that you have experienced this, and to put it frankly, we hope that you have been changed by your experiences over these last 2 days. We hope that you will leave these 2 days not the same as you found yourself when you engaged with us yesterday morning at 9 a.m. We hope that you have been changed by what you have experienced. We encourage you to spend some time, more time, thinking about reentry and talk about reentry, but spend more time doing the work. You may have seen the commercials that talk sometimes about fostering and adoption, especially with teenagers. And the gist of those commercials is that you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be present and caring and active. And so I would say the same applies here. We need you to be present and caring and active in the work of reentry in your community. This is not a passive mission. So the last couple of words I'd like you to think about are these. Passion. We often think about passion and we refer to someone as being a passionate individual. So again, passion at its root is simply an emotion, something that you feel, a strong feeling or a strong belief. I would ask you to think about serving not only with passion, but with compassion. Compassion is suffering together. Compassion is seeing someone else's needs and hopes and desires and being motivated to alleviate or to relieve that particular need or that particular suffering. So I want to go back to what I mentioned earlier in these comments, which is, what is your why? Are you motivated to relieve the barriers that are faced by people who have been just as involved? Are you motivated to do the work? Are you motivated to be a part of this community? Are you motivated to help people live a new life in a new space that they've not experienced before? And if you are, I'd ask you to keep this in mind as well. So I'm hoping that something that I've said in these past minutes have inspired you. However, I would ask you to also think of this. Inspiration, I believe, is external. I can say some words and push the right buttons emotionally, and I can get you to think about a lot of things or feel some things maybe for a few minutes, but that tends to be fleeting and external. So let's be clear. I need you to be motivated. Motivation is internal. I need you to be motivated. I need you to feel compelled, not committed, compelled. Compelled means you do something because you have to, because it's what's inside of you. And we hope that over these past few days, you have heard and seen enough things and enough information, and you have evaluated it and related it to your past, present, and future thinking and behavior, that you are now not only motivated, but compelled to do the work of reentry. So I want to leave you with those words. We appreciate all of you for joining us. We appreciate your commitment to the work. We appreciate your passion and your compassion for the work of reentry and the reentry community as we have defined it over these past few days. And so on behalf of the Building Bridges team, all of our partners and everyone who's participated over these past few days, thank you and have a good afternoon. We hope to see you in 2023.